Welcome back. What's it like being on national television, competing amongst non-Muslims in a cooking show, all the while still staying true to your faith and identity? Well, let's find out by talking to Reem Ahmed about her experience as being the first Muslim hijabi contestant on Masterchef Canada, a Canadian cooking show competition where contestants showcase their culinary talents. Welcome back to the show, Reem.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk about your experience while you were on Masterchef, the show itself. So were there any other visible Muslims other than yourself, male and female?
I guess I was the only one.
So even behind the camera, you were the only one?
Even behind the camera, yeah.
So as a practicing, okay, that's good to know. So you're the only sort of visible Muslim. And we know as a practicing Muslim, obviously there are certain things that, you know, we practice, like for example, praying 5 times a day. So how did you deal with that coming into it?
I'm gonna start with how I entered the room as, you know, a visible Muslim, and there was like the top 20 there. I was actually the last one to arrive because I was hugging my baby so much I didn't want to let go. And by the time I went in there, everyone was sitting and like answering application questions, and then everyone was like,
stopped and looked at the late
yeah,
couple
who are you? and I'm like, you know, they're gonna get to know me. And they did, and they kept asking lots of questions, and they were like, some of them have never actually talked to a Muslim before.
So I think that's really interesting because this, like, it's Canada-wide, and we often take pride saying, you know, Canada's so multicultural, or Muslims everywhere. But it's really interesting that, you know, even offline, you had told me that they actually, you were their first interaction.
Exactly.
Which is really interesting.
We are everywhere. They see us, but I don't think they felt comfortable enough to
talk to someone.
Ask questions. You know, I bet you there are a lot of questions that are coming through their minds, and they want it cleared. And especially the provinces that are far from Ontario, they get little interaction with Muslims. And it was actually the best thing I ever went through, like just answering those long waited questions. So
what, just so we get a sense, what kinds of questions are there, like?
So like, why are you wearing a scarf? Who can see your hair? Who can't? Why do you pray 5 times a day? And do you eat pork? Why? All these questions, and they are very simple questions that we are used to. But to know that lots of people have always wanted to ask these questions and never had their answer, just makes me feel, are we not out there enough? Maybe we're not. You know, making them feel comfortable enough to be able to approach or ask us. So it was good to know something like that. And after they got to know me, and they know
broke the ice.
Exactly, and they know my routine now. They know that I pray. And the first time when I was asking about a place to pray in the studio, and they're like, oh, there's a really quiet, dark room, and you can go there whenever you want. And then we were like trying to figure out where the Qibla is, and like you can see me and I call her, like, we call them mom and dad, the people who were responsible of us, like taking us from the studio to the hotel and back and forth, and we were standing there and trying to figure out, they were like, which direction is it? And they opened their Google Maps, and they were trying to figure out the direction of the prayers, and they're like, oh, it's this way. And then, you know, they were very happy to help me with knowing the direction of the praying. And then, like, sometimes when me and the girls only would be staying in the hotel, and someone knocks at the door, and it's a guy, for example, they're like, Reem, take your scarf, someone is coming. And they started, like, you know, telling me what to do and what not to do. They're now more experienced than I am.
And how did you feel, like, in terms of, like, you know, I know a lot of people sort of when they're not working in sort of Islamic settings and mainstream settings, I know even for me, I've had experiences with colleagues where there's actually a hesitation to even ask for prayer space, like initially, especially if you're the only one. So did you initially, you know, before sort of the ice got broken and you knew, okay, I know I need to pray, was there a sense of like, okay, who am I going to ask? What are they going to say? Did you go through that process, or?
I actually did not at all. Like they know, they feel you. They know how you would feel, how, you know, what is it called?
I guess the environment was created in a way where it was sort of almost expected. That
it's open to everyone. Like if you see all the contestants, everyone is so diverse and and everyone has been through a lot to be recognized, and they know that feeling. They know the feeling of being unrecognized or unappreciated, or being a minority, and they made me feel so comfortable and so at home.
So then even asking for prayer space was sort of like a natural.
Exactly.
It wasn't like you didn't have to think twice about it. Yeah. And then what about things like, obviously it's a cooking show. It's not a Muslim cooking show. So what about dealing with things like pork, for example, or cooking with, non-halal meat? How did that work?
So first of all, I was praying that when I opened the mystery box, I wouldn't find just pork that I had to cook with. Like when one of the mystery box, the chef's plate, there was a lot of ingredients. There was pork, but they give us so many other ingredients that we can use. There was turkey.
So just to clarify, sort of, how does the mystery box process work? You just get a box and
so there is a box, and we can see what's underneath a mystery box. And we left, and then surprise, you have to cook with this.
With all of those ingredients.
So it depends. Each mystery box is different. The first one we had coffee beans, and we had to cook with coffee. And then the second one, we left it, and there was a lot of ingredients from chef's plate. There was like turkey, chicken, there was pork, and there was vegetables, apples, everything. And they were like, you just create a dish that you want to serve, speaks to you, and you want to serve to your family. And everyone went,
So did you ever cook with meat then on the show?
I did. I cooked with meat, and they actually had the fridge. You would see a lot of the meat or the chicken labeled halal.
Oh,
so they had
amazing.
a section for whoever wanted to use halal.
So you didn't even actually have to ask; it was sort of already taken into account. Yeah. Okay. And then what about alcohol? So I won't give away the story, but I know I watched one episode where your item looked a little different. So tell me a little bit about sort of cooking with alcohol and a different ingredient.
So the thing is, when I filled in the application, I only said pork. I didn't mention alcohol because as a Muslim, we don't really, it doesn't click that we're cooking with alcohol. It doesn't cross your mind. So they did not know that that cooking with alcohol was something I wouldn't do. And we were at the cake challenge. It was the third episode. And we had the ingredients in front of us. It was a pressure test. So sometimes when it's a pressure application test, you have the ingredients in front of you. And I was looking a few minutes into filming, and we're preparing, we can't touch anything until they say start. And I'm looking and I'm reading, and there's like Kirsch liqueur. I'm like, this name doesn't sound like something.
Yeah.
Like, is this? And then I was like, guys, is this alcohol? And they're like, just a second, let us check. And they went and checked, and they're like, yep, that's the syrup that we had to put on the cake had alcohol, and the cherries as well, they were soaked in alcohol. And I started, getting overwhelmed, even though I'm not going to eat it. And they already, it's okay for them to eat it, but just the idea of
cooking with
it, and like, I'm representing as well a lot of Muslim people, and I don't want to represent them in that way in cooking with something with alcohol. And I'm like, I can't cook with alcohol. I'm so sorry that I didn't say that before, but I can't. And they were like, immediately they were like, okay, we were gonna replace it. Replace the ingredients for you. And they got the other cherries, and they gave me another syrup for the topping. And I was really emotional. I kept saying thank you. And by the time I started, like in this challenge, I was like completely out of place for the first like 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. I was so emotional.
Because that was right before, so they had started filming and then you paused.
As like we were starting, they're like action, and they were just about to say like,
oh, and
start
then
cooking.
Right then, gotcha. And right then that experience happened, and
exactly.
so it kind of threw you off.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. But the response in terms of like the fact that they responded right away, how did that?
It made me so emotional. I was like, oh my God, they're changing they're changing the rules for me. Like replication challenge is a replication challenge. You have to do the exact same cake that we saw on the stand.
Yeah.
And for them to say that my cake is gonna look different because I used different cherries without alcohol because I can't consume alcohol was something. It was something.
Yeah.
You know, it's Canada. It's how we roll. So
well, I know I was watching that episode with my mom, and they actually said, they were like, oh, and I was wondering why your cake looked different, like the cherries look different. I was like, what's going on? And they actually said, like, they acknowledged it. They said, you know, because she's using a non-alcoholic product. So I thought that was really symbolic, I think. And
it wasn't as pretty as the others.
No,
but
it was definitely pretty. It looked different though, right?
Like it looked different. It was obvious that it was different.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously it sounds like there was a lot of, you know, accommodation and understanding for you in terms of, as a Muslim, and I'm sure they would have done that for anyone else as well with any specific religious accommodations. So, you know, let's talk about postpartum depression and anxiety. So what was that like? I know we, you know, we had talked earlier about, you know, you knew something was off going into the show, but you didn't exactly know what it was. Yeah. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, like as I said, I went into the show. I knew it was really hard to leave Yahya behind, and I knew it would be hard for any mom, but not to that extent. I was feeling like my heart is being broken. I was crying every night, just
while you were away on the show.
Yeah, while I was away, just knowing that he's. I don't know what's happening. Who's changing his diapers?
Even though he's with the father.
With the dad, and my mom and my mother-in-law would check on him every once in a while. So I knew he's in a good place and in good hands, but at the same time, I wasn't feeling well. I would wait for each call and tell my husband, make sure no one kidnaps him from daycare. Like. These are not just ideas that come to everyone's mind. I keep thinking of the worst case scenarios when it comes to anything related to Yahya.
And can we also talk about sort of the environment that you're in? You don't have access to your family. Like, talk to me about during the competition process. Like, what's going on then?
We're away from our family. We don't have access to internet. We can't see our families. We're away from them the entire time. We only get one phone call a week. That's when we can talk to our families, and talking to a baby on a phone is not something you want to do.
And how old was your baby then?
He was 1 year old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're completely secluded.
Exactly.
And you're going, and you know you're having these feelings, and you're basically crying every night while you're at the competition. And did you tell anyone, or?
I did not tell anyone because I thought that was like normal, because when you have depression and you don't recognize it, you just think that's the norm. And I had other moms on the show. They were having hard times as well, and we would just sit after the phone call. We would call it the crying day. Everyone would be like crying after calling their families, and I'm like, I think that's normal. Everyone is sad as well because they left their families behind. But on the show, I did not recognize that the feelings, the overwhelming, and everything I'm having regarding thinking of my baby was because of postpartum depression. I didn't even talk about it on the show. I didn't say it in any of my interviews, and it's when I got home that I realized there was something wrong.
So after the show had ended.
After the show had ended, and I went back home, and I had I kind of had an emotional breakdown, because like after something like this happening to you and going back to your normal life after, it's very challenging, you know.
Well, and you were also away for like 3 weeks and completely disconnected from the world in all forms, right?
Yes.
And then you're being put back.
Exactly.
So that was sort of the trigger that sort of helped you.
Yeah. And then my husband talked to me, and like, you know, it's okay to talk to someone. It's okay. You can go and seek help. It's like any other illness. If you're sick, if you have a stomachache, if you have a headache, you go to the doctor and you take something for it. And same thing, we should not treat mental illness as something, you know, strange or something disgraceful. It's a normal. It's actually what depression does. It changes the chemicals in your brains, in your brain, and that's something physical as well. It's not just
Exactly.
something illusional, it's something physical that happens to your brain. And depression can actually make your body feel tired and sick. You can actually feel pain in your body by just being depressed and anxious when it goes to extreme levels. So we should absolutely recognize that. We should, especially in our community, like put support out there for those who are suffering from depression and anxiety. And it doesn't really have to be related to postpartum depression. It just happens that postpartum depression is the greatest form of depression. And unfortunately, a lot of moms, you know, some takes their lives, some take their baby's life with them, and it's such a sad reality. The statistics say that 1 out of 5 moms suffer from postpartum depression, and that's a lot. And I bet you not everyone talks about it, so even these calculations may not be accurate. So.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much for
you.
coming on the show and talking about your experience at MasterChef, and also talking so publicly and openly about postpartum depression. I hope it certainly, you know, raise awareness, and I think you are a true representation of, you know, you can really accomplish anything. So thank you so much, Reem.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.